Hi everybody, looks like I've made it. I'm a little dark today because I'm sheltering under a roof, because from being very, very, very lovely weather and calm as anything, a real storm is brewing up. So I think we're going to have some heavy rain in a minute and the wind's getting a bit crazy. I hope you can hear me. Now, I want to say that two things happened lately that were really exciting. And the first is that last week, wow, here comes so much for the bollards saying no entry, but never mind. The first thing is that I had, since I've been doing the Facebook Lives solo, all on my own in the socially distanced ones, I got my first troll last week. And some of you will have seen this chap. He was complaining, well, I went to Yale and I went to visit, I forget whether it was Princeton or Harvard, and I didn't brag about it, so stop bragging about Oxford, get to the point, stop telling us about Sir Andrew Wiles. So although you're not supposed to feed the trolls, I figured, you know what, fair's fair. Today I am not going to tell you what that building is behind me. I'm going to leave it to you to find out all by yourself. So let's crack on with the story today. As you can see from the headline, it's are online surveys ever worth it? And the reason that I want to look at that question is one of the most popular articles this week on Naked Security was a review, if you like, a walkthrough that I did of an online survey scam that I received this week. Now, I got it to the email address that I had when I was working at Sophos in Australia. I've kept that address. It gets some very interesting spam. So, of course, it ends .com.au. And in there was a survey scam for a well-known Australian brand. They'd completely ripped off the name, they'd completely ripped off the logos and look and feel of the website. So when you clicked through, it kind of seemed legit. The crooks weren't trying too hard. And by the way, some of my colleagues in the Australian office, they had this same scam, but both them and I have been lately receiving to the same addresses a whole load of German language spam, ripping off well-known German brands. And we don't know why we're suddenly getting German spam more than we used to. And the only surmise I can make is that the crooks confused .au, that they mixed up, as always happens, Australia, which is AU, and Austria, which is .at. I don't know why. But generally speaking, the crooks, A, they will use brands from all over the world, and B, they will try, or at least they did in most of the emails that get to this Aussie email address, they try to pick a brand that you'll have heard of that's well known in your country. It's not the fault of that brand. The brand has nothing to do with the survey. It's very difficult to protect your brand against that kind of abuse for obvious reasons. The crooks can go to your website, download logos, download publicity shots, and just build them into their own email. So the thing with this particular scam, it was a little bit less obvious than the average online scam, although it ended up with a so-called cheap or free iPhone or Samsung Galaxy I could pick, or a top-notch games console. I got to choose in the end. So here's how it worked, and this is why I felt it was a little more subtle and sophisticated, if you like, than others in the past. Claire Williams, hi, welcome back, Claire. Thanks for joining in. Hope you can hear me okay. Golly. Get a bicycle or a silencer, one would do. So basically you start off with a ripped off brand, you start off with some fairly reasonable talk about, hey, would you like to do a survey? And many of us do online surveys. You know, there's a $5 gift voucher or free delivery on your next order. It kind of feels harmless enough. And the crooks, it looked as though they'd ripped off the survey as well, because when you click the button, they were perfectly well-written, grammatical, correct English questions. They did make one mistake. It was a hardware store brand, but they used grocery store questions. That was a blunder, which would have been an obvious sign in this case, but that was just a mistake they made. They didn't have to make that mistake. Remember, they're copying other people's stuff. If they put it together correctly, it would all have worked out pretty well for them. And the questions were perfectly reasonable. It said, well, are you male or female? How often do you visit our stores? What kind of things do you like to buy? That sort of question. And which would you like to see the most? Would you like to see faster checkout, more staff to help you in the aisles, or longer opening hours? So a perfectly realistic survey, and the kind of a thing that feels perfectly innocent to answer. Okay, sound is fine. A party. Oh, apart from the moped. Yes. Go with L plates, learner license. Great, absolutely excellent. Looks like he's learning to do all the wrong things. I think it was a he. By the way, talking about, you know, having a common way to tell the difference between men and women, at least in the old days, was long hair. Look how it's coming along. For the first time in many, many years, I'm actually having helmet hair trouble. So the thing is that after you do this survey and it seems perfectly reasonable, then comes the bait and switch. What happens is the survey goes, hey, guess what? You're not getting a $5 gift voucher. You're not going to get free delivery. You're not getting some free cosmetics that we'll send you if you just give us your address. No. You get to pick one of our super special prizes. You're one of the extra super lucky 6 people or however many it is. So I get to choose between top-end games console, latest Samsung Galaxy, or an iPhone. It's always an iPhone, isn't it? And you click the button, and of course, then you're into more familiar scamming territory where it's a free phone, but there is a delivery fee. It's a modest delivery charge, so you're not paying anything on the phone. You're paying a couple of dollars to deliver. Put in your email address, put in your credit card number, and then the crooks have got your data. Now that led to, so you should have spotted that particular scam mainly because it started with a hardware store brand, and then it suddenly, accidentally, a blunder by the crooks, they actually went into grocery store questions. So it's obvious that these guys were up to no good. But the problem is that all the URLs you visited had padlocks. They were all HTTPS. The crooks had set them up for that purpose. And the other problem is that most legitimate brands, when they do a survey, they're not survey companies. Like a hardware store chain is not a survey company, so they get a third party to do the survey. So you get a URL that doesn't belong to the company. You just kind of have to have faith that the survey is legit. And you kind of feel, well, I'm not giving away any really personal information. They know that this response is tailored to my email address because there's a tracking code in the link, but all I'm telling them is, would I like their stores to say open longer, yes or no? It doesn't really sound like a lot. And it's only at the end that they try and get that personal data, that the credit card number that they'll use against you. So the obvious reply that some commenter said is, you know what, why bother with surveys at all? Just stay out of the way. That's the simple solution. Online surveys always lead to no good because you're giving away something in return for, well, who knows what. So with that in mind, that led me to the question for today's video: are online surveys ever worth it? So I want to go through 5 quick points, 5 quick tips. There aren't 5 on my list. One of them has 3 subpoints, but I'll try and keep this brief. 5 quick tips which will help you falling for that kind of thing, even if you're the kind of person that doesn't mind online surveys once in a while. Maybe it's a company you like. I sometimes do that. It's a survey I like. I'm a willing buyer. They're a willing seller. I've done business with them before. I don't mind helping them improve their service. I don't mind answering a few basic questions like, how did I find the ordering process? What would make it smoother? What sort of products would I really like to see them carrying that they're not carrying so far? How promptly did my last delivery arrive? Was I satisfied? Did I like the courier company, etc., etc.? I don't mind helping out a business like that because I'm not really sharing any information that I think they could use against me later. But here are my 5 tips that start with that very first idea that some of our commenters said. So the first tip is you need to decide, are you into online surveys at all? Because if you decide that for your purposes in your online life that actually online surveys are a thing best avoided, then you've kind of solved the problem then and there, haven't you? Because if you never take online surveys, even if they look decent, even if they look like there's something in it for you, then you won't fall prey to an online survey scam because you won't get there in the first place. So that's point 1. It is possible to opt out entirely, and then it's a problem that you simply don't have to worry about. In the same way that if you never click login links in emails, you won't end up on a fake bank site and put in your password because you wouldn't click the link even if it was from your own bank. So the second tip is, well, what if you decide that you don't mind doing online surveys? What if you figure, you know what, in return for free delivery on my next order, I don't mind answering a few basic questions. It's no skin off my nose and it's worth $4 or $5 to me. Why not? I was thinking of ordering something anyway. I've done that and it's worked out well for me and I don't see that it's a problem. But if you're going to do that, you need to decide, you need to pick the limit to which you're prepared to go. Now, the first problem is trying to pick, do I want to participate in the survey, is that many surveys, and I don't like this kind of survey, I wish companies wouldn't do it, they don't show you all the questions up front, do they? They ask you question 1 and question 2 and question 3. I understand why. It looks cooler, the graphics are easier to read, it works better on a phone. But what it means is if you get to question 5 of 6 and suddenly they're asking for a question that you do feel uncomfortable with and you think, I wonder if this survey is a scam after all, or I'm not comfortable with a company that even even wants to ask me my birthday, for example, when it doesn't need it, you can't bail out and unanswer the previous questions. You've already clicked the button, the results have already been recorded. So unfortunately, before you start the survey, you need to look at it and do that risk-reward measurement. You can't judge what they're going to ask you in future, but you can at least decide whether you think this survey it might even possibly be useful to you. And if it's not, if you're not certain, don't begin. Because if you do bail out halfway through, you've still given out the information up to that point. And the flip side of that is that you should never keep going or continue because you started. To quote the old Mastermind TV quiz game thing, I've started so I'll finish. Don't do that. If you do decide to start the survey, if you do think that the rewards outweigh the risks, and then you get to a point where you're uncomfortable, don't think, you know what, there's only 2 questions to go, I'll throw away that $5 gift voucher. At the point that you are uncomfortable enough not to answer the question, then bail. Because if you force yourself to finish because you're nearly there, that's where you fall for the bait and switch scams, because you think, you know what, I've invested enough already that I want to keep going. So be prepared to bail out early if you think there's anything hooky about the scam, or even if it's a legitimate survey and you think, you know what, this has just gone too far, I'm giving up now. You can't recall your old answers, but that doesn't mean you should feel compelled to give new answers that simply make a bad thing worse. The third thing to remember is when you're looking at a survey, whether it's before you started or whether it's part way through, if at any point it looks like there's something wrong with it, if you even get an inkling that you think it might be a scam, you know what? It is a scam. It's often that simple. So if there's a spelling mistake, if it's a legitimate company and they made a spelling mistake, well, that's their bad luck, isn't it? Next time they'll do their proofreading properly and they won't make the mistake. But if there's anything that doesn't add up, like in the case I just mentioned, I thought it looked perfectly innocent, there wasn't a spelling mistake inside, and then suddenly it's asking me questions about a grocery store for what I know to be a very, very popular Australian hardware store chain. Doesn't add up. The crooks have made a blunder. Don't let them get away with that. So if anything looks wrong, assume that means the whole thing's a scam. Bail out while you're ahead. The fourth thing I'd recommend is get yourself a decent security product, whether you're using a phone or a laptop or a desktop computer. Now, I've mentioned before on the videos products like Sophos Home, which is free for Windows and Mac, Sophos Intercept X for mobile, which is free on Android. There's also an iOS version, but it's harder to do antivirus software on iOS because obviously Apple has this walled garden where they don't want you to go, but there is an iOS version if you want it. And the idea is whatever product you choose to use, look for something that will monitor data that comes down. So if you do have to download something, whether it's a program or a data file, the software will check it out before it allows it to be used. That gives you a chance of blocking things like scams and malware when the file arrives in the first place. And secondly, look for a product that has live web filtering in it. In other words, if there's something that's innocent to start with, and then at some later point that you can't control, the third website you visit suddenly visits a fourth website which is known to be associated with criminality or malware, you want a product that can jump in at that point and actually stop the web request starting, if you like, rather than waiting for the results to come back and then relying on scanning them. Because if you know you're visiting a site that's associated with criminality, even if at the instant you visit it, it doesn't have any malware or dodgy stuff on it, why go there at all? And the last thing I'd like to mention, this is kind of quite important, is that if you do fall for one of these, if you do fill in a survey, if you do realise at the end you've given away more information than you should have. For example, you realise in the scam I mentioned, there's a bit where it says, put in your email address, and it's a very simple trick that says that, right, we need to know how to contact you, put in your email address password, just like you're logging into your email account. And I can imagine there are any number of people who might just type in their email address out of habit, type in their password and click through before they realise. In fact, you can type in any old password. There are many people might, just to see where they go. But the point is, it's possible, if you just lose concentration for a moment, to give away information that you didn't mean to. And of course, the last stage of this scam is they want your credit card number to bill you for a modest amount for the delivery of your free item. So if you get to a point where you realize you have actually given away personally identifiable personally identifiable information, like a password or a credit card number, a CVV code, anything like that, that you know the crooks are going to use against you as soon as they can. They're going to try it out as soon as possible. Don't wait. So if it's a password, get in there and change it immediately, because if you change the old password before the crooks do, you win, they lose. And secondly, if it's card information you've given away, look on the back of your card. There should be a phone number there. Call it up and report that your card has been compromised sooner rather than later. Because if you do so, the credit card company, typically, they will act immediately, and any transaction the crooks try probably won't go through or will be reversed if they do. And it means that the crooks can't sell on your credit card data for somebody else to use later. So the bottom line is, folks, it's not bad to participate in online surveys. You know, if you're going to get free delivery for your next order for a company you already trust, there is essentially little harm in answering fairly open-ended questions just about, you know, what do you like about our site? You're not telling them where you live, although they probably know that already. You're not giving away personal habits. You're not giving away stuff that can really be used against you. And who knows, you might help them improve the service in a way that you like. So online surveys aren't inherently bad, but if you never participate in them out of choice, then you can't get caught out. But if you do decide to go there, whatever you do, at the first sign that you feel uncomfortable or that somebody has made a blunder that a professional company would not, get out. And if you've given away any information like a password or a credit card number, report or change as soon as possible. Thanks for listening, folks, and until next time, stay secure. And I hope to get back at our troll, you did manage to read the name of the building behind. It's kind of quite famous.